I want to go into some of the other, I guess, chemicals that you hear associated with the brain and have you explain to us what they are and why they're important for happiness, for brain health. Let's talk about serotonin. What is it and why is it important?
Serotonin is hugely important for many different functions in the brain, but for happiness, for flexibility, and respect. And respect's the ones that fools people. But when your serotonin levels are low, you more easily feel disrespected. And if you have a social fight or you feel diminished in some way, your serotonin levels drop. And when serotonin levels go low, people tend to worry. They get stuck on negative thoughts, negative behaviors. They tend to be argumentative and oppositional. And if things don't go their way, they get upset, which on the surface can appear selfish, but it's really not selfish. It's rigid. And boosting serotonin with like bright light therapy, which is why it's so important to get sunshine. And while, as we go into the holidays, time change happens just at the wrong time, right? As we get less sunlight and it gets colder outside, we just, then got a bomb dropped on us. Like all of a sudden you lose an hour a day of light. And light is so important.
Let me back us up a second. So does your brain create serotonin? Is that what is the function of serotonin in the brain?
So your gut makes about 90% of the serotonin in your body, but it doesn't go directly into your brain. Your brain creates serotonin from the amino acid precursor called tryptophan. And that's why often eating tryptophan rich foods,
like turkey,
can be helpful, but not in a ketogenic way. You have to eat tryptophan rich foods with a carbohydrate because you need an insulin response to drive tryptophan into the brain. So turkey and sweet potatoes together is a great combination to boost your mood.
So when you have high levels of serotonin, how does that impact you?
We tend to be happy. You're a little bit less motivated. You sort of don't care that much. I remember when Prozac first came on to the market, and I would give it to some of my depressed patients, and they would say they would be less depressed, but also less motivated. Because as tryptophan goes up, dopamine, another chemical we should talk about, goes down. They have this sort of counterbalancing effect, which is why, and this is really interesting for anyone who grew up in an alcoholic home. I studied children and grandchildren of alcoholics. They often have low levels of both serotonin and dopamine. And so if I just raise one, I make them better in some ways, but worse in other ways. So a lot of people who take SSRIs, they go, well, I'm happier, but I don't really care that much. I had one guy tell me he wasn't doing his taxes. And he's like, no, this is going to be a problem. So I had to rebalance his medication.
So is serotonin sort of the happiness one and dopamine is the motivation and drive one? Is that their relationship?
Well, they're both. You think of both of them involved in happiness. And dopamine is the molecule of more. It's when you get dopamine, you go, oh, I like that. And the problem is the more you get, the more you want. And then it turns into trouble. We are wearing out our dopamine centers in the brain and our society with our phones and social media and the nonstop video games and texting. We're being thrilled to death, which ultimately wears out the pleasure centers in the brain. So you have to be very careful. I often talk to people about drip dopamine, don't dump it.
What does that mean? Drip dopamine, don't dump it.
So you want little tiny little tiny bursts of dopamine, not a big splash. So for example, cocaine, big splash of dopamine and you go, whoa. But the problem is you have none left and then you get depressed, which you then start using. Alcohol is the same way. Alcohol dumps dopamine. Nicotine, vaping dumps dopamine. Scary movies dump dopamine. Falling in love dumps dopamine. You want to drip it, holding Tana's hand, getting eye contact, looking for what I call the micro moments of happiness. So much more important. And new love is totally dumping dopamine. So you always, whenever you just fall in love, you need to whoa, this is really awesome. Let me ride this out before I make any big decisions.
So would an example of dripping dopamine include the two micro habits you talked about? One being waking up in the morning and saying, I'm going to make it a great day. How am I going to do that? And also at the end of the day, going on that treasure hunt for what went right?
Yes.
Excellent. How can you tell if you have low dopamine?
If you're tired, if you find that you're unmotivated, if you're sad, and you just don't have the motivation to get done what you want to get done. And, I'm in Justin Bieber's docuseries Seasons. And, I've been his doctor for a long time. And they just wore that boy's dopamine centers out. And then, when you become famous like that, you have access to women, to drugs, to video games, and just completely, almost killed that boy. And they deadened his pleasure centers. But the good news is even if you've been bad to your brain, by doing the right things, your brain, we call it neuroplastic, it can be better, even in a matter of months.
Wow. We've talked about supplements. We've talked about some micro habits. What are 3 simple ways to increase dopamine?
Cold showers will do it. So I just took a shower before I did it. And I always finish with 2 minutes. I turn it all the way cold because cold therapy has been shown to increase both norepinephrine, another neurotransmitter, and dopamine. Eating tyrosine-rich foods. So we talked about tryptophan, the amino acid building block for serotonin. Tyrosine is the amino acid building block for dopamine. So things like almonds and eggs and beans and fish and chicken, dark chocolate. But you don't want to do that with an insulin response or with a carbohydrate. And so this is where a higher protein, lower carbohydrate diet can be helpful. Exercise also does it, and certain supplements like tyrosine. So tyrosine is a supplement, and it's the amino acid building block for dopamine.
So is there any certain times of day where your dopamine is higher or lower just naturally?
In the morning.
And is the same true with serotonin?
In the evening.
Okay. So to explain that to us, and then how we can use something natural to boost it.
So everybody's circadian rhythm or the rhythm of their energy is different. There are morning larks and night owls, and you sort of have to know what you are. A lot of my ADD patients are night owls, and society is sort of biased against them. because school starts early, work starts early for a lot of people. But you just have to know your rhythm. And if your dopamine is high in the morning, that's when you want to focus and get work done. If it tends to be higher later in the day, know your rhythm. Serotonin often helps people sleep. And in our supplement, Put Me to Sleep, we actually have 5-HTP, which is the amino acid precursor, even closer to serotonin than tryptophan. And for a lot of people, it helps decrease worry and promote sleep.
Wow. I'm like slightly overwhelmed. I don't even know where to start in terms of like how to boost my serotonin naturally, how to boost my dopamine naturally. So is there a way to simplify this? Like, you just kind of talked about your circadian rhythm and understanding if you're a night owl or you're a morning person. So if you're a morning person and you kind of wake up and you're naturally more motivated, are there certain things you should do first thing in the morning to keep your dopamine levels high, to stay focused, to promote your brain health?
So one thing I really like, especially as we start into later fall and winter, is morning bright light.
Okay.
And so people who have seasonal affective disorder, so winter blues, that morning bright light therapy, and you can actually get these therapy lamps. I make one called our Bright Minds therapy lamp, 10,000 lux. So it's bright.
Okay.
Don't look at it, put it like an arm's length away from you while you're putting on your makeup or having breakfast, if you have breakfast, for 20 or 30 minutes in the morning. Super simple, can significantly improve dopamine, your energy, mood, and cognitive function. Exercise, whether you want to increase serotonin or dopamine, it does both. Walk like you're late for 45 minutes, 4 or 5 times a week. Super simple, bright light, exercise, just incredibly helpful. And this is very important. I just turned 68 this year. And it's very clear to me that the stronger you are as you age, the less likely you are to get Alzheimer's disease. But it's really, for older people, it's frailty that kills them almost more than anything else. So light, exercise, simple supplements, and no, you can eat in certain ways to boost the neurotransmitters in your brain.
So when you say frailty and strength, are you also recommending, in addition to the 30 to 40 minutes of walking as if you're late 3 or 4 times a week, that you also add in strength training?
You bet. I think it's absolutely critical for men and for women. Your muscles are your protein reserve. So one of my young doctors went to Hawaii on vacation and got this terrible infection that almost killed him.
Oh,
And
wow.
the reason he didn't die is he was strong when he went into that illness and had the protein reserve muscle on his body. And yeah, no, I remember the day when in the hospital, I expected I was going to get a call. He died in the middle of the night because he just got this wicked infection from jumping into a natural pool in Hawaii. But he survived and he's done great because it's the protein reserve or the brain reserve you bring into an illness or an accident that determines how you're going to do after it. I mean, you probably, seen, one person gets into a car accident and they come out of it just fine. Another one's permanently damaged. Same accident. Why? Because it's the level of brain health or brain reserve they brought into the accident that often determines the outcome. So every single day of your life, from my perspective, every single day of your life, you should be boosting your brain reserve.
Now I want to talk to you because you're an amazing person and you have the ability to impact so many people's lives. And I don't know if you realize just how powerful you are. That your energy, your love, your enthusiasm, being radically generous with it, it can change absolutely anybody's day. And when you change somebody's day in a positive way, that great day can become a great week. And that great week can roll into an amazing month. And that amazing month can turn into an incredible year. You just have no idea what somebody's dealing with. My friend Ed Millette, who is amazing, you should follow him. He's one of my favorite people on the planet. He told me this story about how there is a person out in the world who was there when his father was struggling with alcoholism. And this stranger got his dad help. And Ed said if it weren't for that stranger, Ed wouldn't be here. And that one act of kindness from one person can change somebody's entire life. And you have that power. And so I want you to think as you head into your day about the image of blowing bubbles. You know when a kid is blowing bubbles and the bubbles catch the sunlight and they float around and they fly away? It feels so good, doesn't it? It makes you smile. And you can stand there on a beautiful sunny day and blow bubbles and they drift off into space. And who knows how far they go? Your energy is just like that. And you can spread good energy, and you should. How do you do that? Be generous with the I love yous. Be super generous, telling people I appreciate you. In fact, I have a habit every single day. I make it a habit to tell somebody that I appreciate them. And I do that by either reaching out to a friend and telling them that I miss them and I'm thinking about them. I have a friend who's going through a really challenging moment right now with her dad. Hospice has been called in, and I'm texting her every morning, telling her that I'm sending her a hug and that she doesn't need to text me back, but I just want her to know that I'm here for her. I tell that to people that help me in the grocery store. I tell it to anybody, honestly, because we all need to hear it. Thank you for helping me. Thank you for being here. I love complimenting people's nails or their jewelry or their hairstyle or their socks and smiling. And don't forget your family. When somebody walks in the door, how do you greet them? Do you put a big smile on your face? Do you run to the door? Do you say, welcome home? Oh my God, I hope you had a great day. I always give our son Oakley the biggest hug. And I hold it extra tight. And I tell him I'm so happy to see him. Because every time you do this, you smile, you wave, you high five somebody, you give them a hug, you tell them that you love them, you text somebody out of the blue, you are a force for good. If you're staying in a hotel like I'm going to be tonight, leave a note for the person that's cleaning your room, a thank you, a smiley face, tell them you appreciate them. We all need to hear it. And when you become radically generous with your positive energy, with your compliments, with your enthusiasm, with your love, it spreads unbelievable waves of joy and positivity, lifting people up in ways that you'll never know. I am here at the Dallas Convention Center, and there are 3,000 chairs out there, and we have just run through the tech rehearsal, and I'm going to tell you a little secret about how I manage my nerves and how I flip it into excitement. And this is something you can steal. There's always a reason why you are doing something. And when you can find the reason or the purpose for why you want to either give that speech or destroy this sales
presentation, or walk into your boss and advocate for yourself because of the contributions that you're making, or you just want to find the courage to stand up in a town meeting and talk. There's always a reason why. And so before you're about to do it, one of the things that you want to do is you want to remind yourself of why this matters to you. I want to, for example, at work, I want to be compensated and valued for my contributions, and it's my responsibility to make those contributions known. And so I'm going to be super proud of myself if and when I say this. Or I want to make a difference in my town, and so I'm going to have to start speaking up because my voice needs to be heard. I don't want to be complaining about what's going on in this town in my own house. I want to be advocating for what changes I'd like to see make, because I can make a difference. For me, whenever I give a speech, I always say the same thing to myself. I say that, yes, there are 3,000 seats here, but I'm only ever talking to one person. And I believe that there is one person in this audience today who is here because they are meant to be here. And there is something that I am about to say that will change their entire life. That they're going to learn something that might cure their anxiety, or that might help them through a very, very, very dark moment to know that this is temporary. There is someone that's going to be inspired to make a major change. And I know that in the course of the hour that I am speaking on this stage, something is going to happen that is meant for that person. And if I trust that, it allows me to just ditch the script and show up as my full, highest expressed self. You know, look, it might be that I trip on the stage coming out. Not planned, but somebody in the audience seeing that, wow, if that woman on the stage trips and she gets back up, maybe I can stumble and get back up too. Look at how she just brushes it off and she doesn't care. What if I had that? I mean, it could be that. It could be something really profound, like getting sober or leaving a really abusive marriage. So I remind myself of that, and I'm only ever talking to one person. And that helps me. It helps me to stay focused and to know that what I'm about to do, even if it makes my stomach twist in knots, or even if I'm a little, quote, nervous about how it's going to go, it helps me stay aligned with my purpose. And that's where your power alley is always in life. And that's why it's so important for you to push yourself to express yourself and advocate for yourself and share your story. And so steal that idea. Remind yourself of why you're doing this. Only talk to one person and tell yourself that there is a person in this room and you are meant to say something in this room because somebody needs to hear you say it. And when you trust that, it's not about you. It's about the impact that you're about to make. Okay, we should get off the stage because we got to go backstage and get ready. I go on in about an hour. And this is normally the dead zone for people, where they've practiced, they've run through something, and now they wait. And this is where your nerves can get the worst of you. So next up, after a short break for a word for our sponsors, I'm going to teach you the real trick from Harvard Medical School to reframe all those nerves backstage or right before or in anticipation of into excitement so that you can align yourself with your mission and express yourself. Mwah. All right, 5 minutes before I take the stage, and here's the big trick. You know, we reframe fear into excitement. And the thing about nervousness is just your body trying to get you into an alert state because what you're about to do requires you to concentrate. So, for example, you get nervous before a test because it's important and you have to concentrate and you care about the outcome. You get nervous before giving a presentation because you have to pay attention and the outcome's important. You get nervous before you have to sing or go into an interview or go on a date because you're going to be basically putting yourself out there and it's important and you care about the outcome and you got to pay attention. That's what nerves are about. It's about getting you to get into an alert state. Same thing as excitement. Excitement is when your body goes into an alert state because something cool is about to happen and you got to pay attention. And so right now, I literally say to myself, I'm not nervous. I'm really excited. I'm not nervous at all. In fact, I'm so excited to get out on that stage. Why? Because there is one person out there whose life is going to change. And as I get more and more excited and get closer to walking up to that stage, my stomach will start to grumble. I will have to pee. My armpits will sweat. My mouth is starting to get dry. But I keep telling myself, I'm not nervous. Those aren't butterflies. Those are the wings of possibility. Ooh, that's nice. That's deep, Mel. Those are just me getting ready to do something that I care about. And I'm excited to get out there, and I'm excited to make a difference, and I'm excited to express myself, and I'm excited to push myself to do something like this. And so that's my little ritual. I don't dance around. I don't meditate. I don't get calm. I tap into excitement, and I hijack the nerves, and I label it something empowering. And that settles my body, and it makes my focus get really laser focused on the impact I want to make, and that will help you perform. Okay, let me explain why your stomach has butterflies when you're nervous, and why you have to pee, and why your heart races, and why your armpits sweat. This is all part of an automatic response in your body to either something that is exciting or something that is stressful. And when you roll back the clock in terms of evolution and you take a look at stress, we could spend hours and hours and hours talking about this, but I'm just going to boil it down so that you have enough understanding to trust what I'm telling you about why reframing nerves into excitement works. This is from research at Harvard Medical School, where they studied people in situations that made them nervous, job interviews, giving a speech, participating in a debate competition, singing, and running in a track meet. And they taught all of these people to tell themselves they were excited to do the thing that made them nervous, and it helped them perform better. And the reason why reframing stressful situations into excitement works is because there's no physiological difference in your body between a moment that's stressful and a moment that's exciting. Your body has the same alert response to it. All of the blood goes to your heart, it goes to your brain, and that means it leaves your digestive tract. Because honestly, you don't need to be digesting food if you're going to take a test. You don't need to be digesting food if you're going to sing on a stage. You don't need to be digesting food if you're going to give a speech. So the blood goes to your heart so that you can, move, and it goes to your brain so you can think. And I'm dumbing this down. I realize there's a lot more complex science, but just the chemical structure, physiological structure changes. That's where the butterflies come in. See, the butterflies aren't there because you're nervous or excited. The butterflies are there because the blood flow increased to your heart, which is why your heart is racing. And the butterflies are due to that chemical change from the blood going to the heart and not being in the digestive tract. That's what that is, dude. That's also why you have to pee. Because you're not going to need to pee on stage. You're not going to need to pee while you're singing. And so your body has this natural response in exciting or stressful situations to dump what's ever in your bladder or in your bowels. Why? So that you can focus and so that you can run faster or perform better. That's why this happens. And so one of the mistakes that people make is that when they get nervous and they start getting butterflies, you think the butterflies are a sign that you're about to fuck up. No, it's a sign that your body's getting ready to do something. And you get to decide whether you call the thing you're about to do exciting or scary. And that's why the reframing works. Because there's no difference between you walking onto a stage and your heart racing and your armpits sweating and your throat being dry and your stomach being, whoop, see, we are backstage. We're going to let the applause die down. And your stomach being in knots, which is a situation that makes you nervous, or you going to a concert and your favorite band. I can't wait to see Coldplay this fall. When they take that stage, let me tell you something. Right before they come on, I'm going to have to pee. There are going to be pterodactyls in my stomach. My armpits are going to be sweating. My heart's going to be racing. But I'm excited because I said I'm excited. So reframing works. And here's the really important reason why this matters. Not only are you not going to freak yourself out by going, oh my God, my stomach's in knots, it's really hurt, which only increases how stressed you are, by the way. But by telling yourself you're excited, you stabilize yourself. Your thoughts don't race. And based on research from UCLA from Dr. Judith Willis, your stress response doesn't impact your brain functioning, which means all that preparation of studying for the test or preparing for the speech or the presentation, you don't choke. You can tap into it. And so I think they're getting close. So I got to shortchange this science lesson right now. And I realize it's very elementary, but I want you to understand why you get butterflies. And it's not because you're about to fuck up. It's because you're about to do something that you can do and that matters. So go frickin' do it, which is what I'm going to do.
There are simple tools that you can use that act like lifelines in your life. And those tools are meaningful mantras, temporary or permanent tattoos, or there are ways that you can use even a simple Post-it note as a environmental cue. That's what a researcher calls it. You can use a simple Post-it note to act like a lifeline, to remind you that you have the power inside of you to face something. And in those moments where it really counts and you're trying to level up, that yes, you can show up in this moment and you can perform your best. And so while we're going to start with the tattoo story, which is a great story, we're going to get to a deeper topic here. And by the time you're done listening to this episode, you're going to have a phrase that you've identified that will act like a lifeline for you moving forward. And because I always say this is not just a listening podcast, it's a doing one, I'm going to ask you to do something specific. And no, it's not to go get a tattoo. So on the topic of tattoos, if you have a tattoo or you know someone who does, you know that every tattoo has a story. And mine begins just a few weeks before our 15th wedding anniversary. Can you believe this? We've been married 26 years. So this would have been 11 years ago, right? 11 years ago. Yeah, 11 years ago. 11 years ago was 2012. And Chris, let's just set the table for everybody. Because 11 years ago, our life looked really different. 2012, you were still in the restaurant business. We were 800 grand in debt. We were struggling with drinking issues. And we were trying to make the ends meet.
And we thought a tattoo was going to save us.
Hey, we thought it would distract us. We decided that
it was our anniversary.
It was our anniversary. And so we decided that it would be cool if we got tattoos on the date of our 15th wedding anniversary. And
provided it wasn't the same tattoo.
Well, see, this is the thing. I wanted to get matching tattoos. I thought it would be super cool if you and I got the exact same tattoo on our 15th wedding anniversary. And what was your response?
Never.
Yeah, I think it was no fucking way. I think you said that is so cheesy. We are bound for divorce if we get matching tattoos. We are not doing that. And so that was kind of my idea. And Chris just shot it out of the sky. Boom, not happening. And so we got.
Do you remember what my reaction was to even getting it? We had been talking about it maybe a little bit.
I don't remember. Do you remember yours?
Was it an out of the blue idea that, hey, let's do this for our anniversary, or we had talked about it before?
I think we had talked about how we both wanted to get one, and then we decided we'd get it for our 15th, and I thought we'd get matching. You said absolutely not. And then all of a sudden we went into our corners, and we were individually thinking about our tattoos. And as the date of our anniversary, August 24th, came closer and closer, and to the appointment, I started to panic because I had no idea what I wanted for my tattoo. And then all of a sudden, you guys, Chris walks into the room one day and says, I've figured out what my tattoo is going to be. Why don't you tell him the story? Because I wanted to kill you when you told me what it was going to be.
I grew up as a ski racer and was competing in races every weekend in my teenage years. And I was always that kid in the starting gate that was shaken like a leaf and worried about not the race, but the outcome. You know, I was in my head thinking about what was going to be my time and how it was going to line up. And
would it freak you out?
Yeah, it was always about the result.
Yep.
You know, the end game, if you will, for
Yep.
me. Or at least this was the observation that ultimately my dad had of me. And my dad was often at these races, and he, you know, he would he helped me see the racing and the course a little bit differently by constantly suggesting that I just take it one gate at a time. To just, rather than think about the big picture or the end game, just one gate at a time. And along the years, my dad and I would converse about this without ever necessarily giving it a name of a philosophy, if you will. But he wrote a letter to me about it one day. And that was my my tattoo wake up call, that I decided to pull the handwriting off of a letter my dad authored about just taking things one gate at a time. And so that became my tattoo idea.
And so describe where it is and what it is.
I put this tattoo on my forearm, on my left forearm, and I didn't necessarily have a vision for having it kind of be oriented such that I could read it really easily, but ultimately it was the tattoo artist who suggested kind of the right placement of it. But it just says the word one and the word gate, one gate, written in my dad's handwriting.
It's beautiful. And so, being the shallow piece of shit that I am at times, when Chris announced that he had figured out his tattoo and that he was going to take his dead father's handwritten letter to a tattoo artist and have that tattoo artist lift those two words, one gate, in his father's handwriting and put it on his left forearm where he could see it and have as a reminder, I thought, that is the best damn idea. And now I have no idea what the hell I am going to tattoo on my body. I was so pissed and so jealous that you had such a good idea. And you guys, I freaked out and stressed out until the night before we were supposed to get tattoos. The night before we were going to go into this appointment, our 15th wedding anniversary, I still had no idea what I was going to put on my body. And then luckily, a friend of ours who was one of my very first clients when I became a life coach, Deva, who owns the amazing store in Boston called Matsu. She stopped by to say hi, and we started talking about the tattoo. And I said, I have no idea what I want. She agreed. Chris's idea, that was a really good idea. Really good idea. And I
didn't know Deva was the origin of this idea for you.
Yeah. So what happened is I started saying, I don't know what to do. And she said, well, I know what it should be. And I'm like, you do? What should it be? And she said, it should say, it shall be. I said, what? What do you mean it should say, it shall be? She said, you say it all the time. I said, no, I don't. She said, yes, you do. I said, no, I don't. She said, Mel, you have coached me for years. You always say, if you put in the work and you hold the belief that'll happen, at some point, it shall be. I had honestly never realized that I had used that phrase when coaching other people. And as she said it in that way, it just kind of went clunk. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put the words, it shall be, on the inside of my right wrist. And it'll be both a reminder to me that if I do the work, if I have faith, if I keep my head down, and if I give up my timeline, it shall be. It'll all work out. It'll be fine. And so that was that. Now, meanwhile, there's another twist to this story. Because do you remember what happened on our actual 15th wedding anniversary?
Do I ever? That's the funniest part of the whole story.
Okay, well, tell everybody.
Well, just that Mel, you were in radio at the time.
Yeah,
right?
It was when I was a radio host. So you guys, Chris was still in the restaurant business.
So
we were struggling financially.
She was doing some show in Boston, and it wasn't the tattoo artist. You had some show talking about tattoos, right?
Correct.
Throwback. And
all these people called in.
And they suggested like the best tattoo parlor in town.
Correct.
If you're going to get a tattoo, you have to go to this guy.
Yes.
And you, of course, took it upon yourself to book us the appointment, which was at that point had to have been 6 months out.
Yes, and they had a huge wait list, so you couldn't even get in until like 4 months out. We booked this thing 6 months out, you guys.
So you
put
plan
down
it
this
for,
big ass deposit.
for our anniversary.
We have a babysitter. We're going into Boston. We got our appointment. We're about to pull on the Mass Pike. And what happens?
We're pulling out of the driveway, and you're like, well, where we go? Let's get the address of this place. And then you said, well, let me just call him just to make sure, let him know we're coming. And you call him, and sure enough, the guy says, I don't know, we got you on the books for next week.
And I start pleading with him. Oh, no, you can't. We made this 6 months. No. It's next week. It's a week from today. But that's not our anniversary. I never would have screwed this up. This must be a mistake. Can you just fit us in now? No.
And we were going away. We couldn't even make the following
Yeah,
week
but
happen
also
anyway.
the thing was, is it was supposed to be on the anniversary.
Right.
So now here we are with a babysitter. We have our tattoos. You've got your letter. I've got my phrase. We have no appointment. I start calling tattoo parlors because we decide, let's just head into Boston. And I'm like, how hard could this be? Do you know the first 5 or 6 tattoo parlors that I called were booked? Like no openings. I didn't know you couldn't just walk into a tattoo parlor. Who the hell is getting all these tattoos? So I finally call the 6th or 7th place. And it was a place that was right around the corner from this apartment that we used to live in Cambridge, Massachusetts, when we first moved to Boston before we had kids for you to go to graduate school. And the guy answers the phone and he says, sure, come on in. And then he says, what's the name? And I say, Mel Robbins. And he goes, you mean from WTKK, Mel Robbins? I thought I recognized this voice. I love your show. My wife's a huge fan of yours. Come on in. It turned out to be a guy that listened to my old radio show. So we drive to this place. The guy is this amazing, big, bearded teddy bear of a guy. He gives us this big old bear hug. Chris goes first because here's the next twist that happened. It had completely been lost on me that I hadn't even picked out a font or handwriting. And so I had the phrase, it shall be, but I had no idea what I wanted it to look like or how big it was going to be. So while Chris got his tattoo, I pulled up Microsoft Outlook and I started going through the font choices and ended up picking the only font that looked somewhat cool, which turned out to be something called like Zaftigs or Dabbigs or Zad. It was like a Z. Printed it out on his printer. And that became what I permanently put on my body. And I was having like doubts and second guesses, and Chris's looked so good. But I was just like, why didn't I think that I should have like thought about the font?
It looks a little bit like your handwriting though, so that's good.
It's okay. I mean, it's fine. I love my tattoo. I love my tattoo. And so I've got these sort of curved, it shall be right on my inside wrist. And big hooky things, and we'll if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see it. We'll put it on the stories. And the thing that I love about this, and this is why it's so important for us to talk about meaningful mantras today, and environmental cues that you can use to help you stay steady, to help you tap into that courage and that confidence and that power that's inside of you. And over the years, I can't tell you how many times I've looked at this tattoo. And these words, it shall be, they are a lifeline for me. You know, when I think about moments where I was failing at something or life was going off the rails, I would see those words, it shall be. And I'd take a deep breath and I'd put my head down and I'd say, Mel, you just got to keep believing it's going to all work out. You got to keep putting in the work. If you're a good, kind person, it'll happen. Maybe not on your timeline, but just keep going. When times were tough, these 3 words, it shall be, reminded me that this is just a moment And like all moments, this will pass. And now our puppy, Homie, is like wanting to go to the bathroom. It shall be.
No, but it really, it thinking about the question that Jonathan wrote in and saying how you're so intentional in everything that you do. It was a very thoughtful question, and I would agree that your application of that in life is very pronounced, and interesting how you didn't necessarily see it like Deva saw it. And how the only thing that was not intentional about it was the scramble to get the right tattoo before the evening itself.
Well, you know what's great about this?
Actually, I shouldn't say that, because you booked the appointment. We had it on the anniversary. Like we were organized. We were ready to roll. There was intentionality.
The entire story of the tattoo is a demonstration of the philosophy it shall be. Because nothing went according to plan. And yet we just took it one gate at a time. And I was fierce in my belief that it was all just going to work out. What are the odds that the appointment is on the wrong date, or that the first 5 places I call are not available for appointments, but the one that is happens to be a guy that listened to my little local Saturday radio show and recognized my name and voice? Like, it's just a little bit of optimism that acts like a lifeline for me. And it reminds me that it's going to work out, that I have the power within me to face things. That's how I've been using this phrase, it shall be, over the last 11 years, because these have not been the easiest 11 years of our life.
I would argue some of the hardest.
The hardest, for sure. I mean, when I think about the state that you were in when you left the restaurant business just 2 years after I got this tattoo, and you just checked out of life. You're like, I'm getting sober. I have to heal. I have to take care of myself. And for 2 years, you were just comatose. And I'm like in survival mode. And I would look at this, my tattoo, it shall be, and it gave me faith that if I just kept working hard, we'd figure it out. That we'd figure out how to pay the bills, that I would figure out how to build this business, that you would figure out how to heal and find your way back to yourself and to me. And even things like moving up here to southern Vermont and how hard that was. And feeling like I've just turned my whole life upside down. And yet there was this deeper knowing that drove our decision to move and to change our life profoundly, from living outside of Boston to being in this tiny rural town. And on those days that I just felt so lost, I would look at my wrist and go, it shall be. It's going to work out. Like, I can do this. And even with the podcast, everybody was like, you know how crowded that is. You know how there's 5 million podcasts. I was like, you know what? I'm playing the long game. It shall be. I'm going to put in the work. I'm going to go for it. And I even feel that like when our kids are struggling, like it helps me, this phrase, it shall be, to put almost like a beacon out in the future. It's a reminder that at some point the road ahead is easier and great things happen. And it gives me faith to keep going.
I think the location of that tattoo is also properly aligned with you and your own just being reminded of that, right? Because if you had that tattoo on the back of your shoulder,
I'd never see it.
Where you weren't seeing it all day, every day, you had always wanted to put it right, something, whatever it was you were thinking.
Well, why get a tattoo and hide it?
Right.
You know?
So this piece of research is something that researchers actually show is the easiest habit to make the largest impact in your life.
And what is it? You can tell them what it is.
It's being kind to yourself.
This is so profound that I want to dedicate the next episode to just the research on how to be kinder to yourself, because This recent study, I know. And the irony is, of all the things that you could change in the coming year, the research is conclusive that learning how to be kind to yourself as a daily practice has the single biggest impact on your happiness, on your meaning, on your sense of purpose. And the sad thing is, it is the one we practice the least.
Yeah.
And this is so important that the very next episode that we drop in the Mel Robbins podcast is going to go deep on the topic of being kinder to yourself, how to make it a habit, why it matters. And we are also going to do a bonus episode with it where we're going to take people's questions about it. Because yes, let's squat down on the chair. Let's listen to the birds. Let's structure our study time. Let's get the smells going, people. Let's be mindful. Let's, what were the other one? What was the first one we did? See, I've already forgotten.
The first one we did is around the random act of kindness.
Amped up the kindness. Let's go. And kindness towards self is the biggest thing you should do, which is why we're going to talk about it in the next episode.
So here's what we're going to do. You and me, we're bringing the fun. And rule number 1, stop focusing on all the logistics. Focus on the laughter. I'm not kidding about this. I want you to weave laughter into the logistics. If you did the work ahead of time to plan for fun and to make sure it's fun, it will be fun. And, when I say don't just focus on the logistics, also focus on the laughter, I want to tell you a quick story. So we're hosting Thanksgiving this year, and my husband, thank God, is handling the logistics. And so he put together an email and he, assigned all the things out that everybody was doing. And bring the dogs and, bring a bathing suit and ba-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba. And everybody replies back, excited to see you. And we're so excited to get together. And so now as the emails are starting to fly, I'm starting to feel excited. But everybody's just kind of commenting on the logistics. We'll be there Thursday. We'll be there Wednesday night. We're going to bring the dog. Blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, our son Oakley replies. And he replies in all caps, "People, we are going to destroy this feast!" ! And I just laughed out loud. That could be you. Why not reply to the family logistics text chain with a hilarious GIF of somebody dancing with a turkey? Why not put in a hilarious photo of somebody in the family? Why not bring the fun? So don't just focus on the logistics. Make sure you focus on the laughter too. Now, let's talk about step 2. How do you stop falling into the, fun will just happen spontaneity category, and you fall into the, I'm going to make this fun thing happen category? Well, let's look at the research. People who are happy do things that make them happy. That's one of those studies where I'm like, yeah, duh. But then you're like, oh, no wonder I'm not happy. I'm not doing anything or prioritizing happiness. They work at things that make them happy. And it makes sense because when you try things that make you happier, you're a happier person. Well, guess what? The exact same research relates to fun. It's seriously so obvious, it's kind of stupid. But let's have some fun with it, right? Let's not be embarrassed. Your life becomes fun when you plan things that are fun to you. Or even when normal things. You just bring a fun attitude like our son did to the email chain. All caps, exclamation, let's go, people. And on that note, I want to share a story with you about the power of bringing the fun, okay? Don't wait for somebody else to do it. Thankfully, we have somebody in our family who's incredible at this. Our oldest daughter, Sawyer, who's 23 years old, this woman always brings the fun. I mean, she is always doing something really fun with her friends. I can give you a few examples. There was one year where she and her friends were out in Breckenridge, Colorado, and I was looking at the photos online, and they were out at bars in these colonial costumes, literally, like think Holly Hobby, bonnets, prairie dress, apron. They had gone on a bar crawl in costume, looking like women from a colonial era, like Little House on the Prairie. It was such a riot that people all over Breckenridge were stopping them. They were featured on the Breckenridge Facebook page. People were taking photos with them. I mean, talk about bringing the fun. That's hilarious. I mean, I'd never think to order costumes and go on a themed bar crawl. Who does that? Well, apparently people who have fun do that. Another thing that she did recently is we had all of her college friends from Boston College up with their moms for a big mother-daughter weekend. And when we found out that one of the moms, who was a widow, had just gotten engaged to her boyfriend, Sawyer turned to me and said, "Let's throw a wedding." I'm like, "Throw a wedding?" She's like, "Yeah, we're going to throw a wedding." And sure enough, impromptu, they made a sash for the mom. We made a veil out of a paper towel, like, like a long thing of paper towel, and flowers out of like foil. And then we blew bubbles, and we had her daughter, who was wearing this huge foam hat, walk her down the aisle in our living room. And then Sawyer it was hilarious. Absolutely hilarious. Why? She brought the fun. When she heard something, she leaned into it, and we just it was just amazing. And she also did this repeatedly during quarantine. So quarantine was actually a really awesome time for our family once we got over the grieving and we settled into the routine of being together, because our kids brought the fun. Sawyer went through and made an entire chart for the month of March, and she came up with theme nights every other night. There was a family Olympics night. There was a bake-off where we divided up into teams, and we had to bake desserts, and we also had to dress up as chefs. I mean, it was super fun. But the most fun night was a night that I had never heard of. This is a theme you should steal. I love this. It's an anything but clothes dinner. And what does that mean? I didn't know either. It means you have dinner with your family wearing anything but clothes. You're not supposed to go nude. You are supposed to wear something other than clothes. So Sawyer, for example, took 2 huge king-size pillows and duct taped them all around her. So she put one in the front, one in the back, and then duct taped it. So that was her clothes, or her outfit. I can't remember what Oakley wore, and I can't remember what Kendall wore, oddly enough. But I took a champagne bottle box, and I put it across my chest. And the way that I fastened it to me is I poked holes in the top of it, and then I put a ribbon around it and hung it like a necklace, and then put duct tape on the sides so it stayed in place. And then I made a pair of pants out of brown grocery store garbage bags, like 1 bag per leg, and then taped the front together. Now, Chris's outfit was something. Chris took a rubber pot lid. So, you know how you have like a metal pot lid? Well, somebody gave us once these like kind of rubber lids that you can put on top of dishes like in the summer so that flies can't get them, and it had like a little knob on it. He hung this thing across the front of him in front of his private parts. And that's all he wore, except for a pair of clogs and socks. I mean, when he came down the stairs, I almost had a heart attack. He had basically a pot lid across the front of him with a ribbon around his waist and clogs on. I'll tell you, we have laughed about that moment forever. And every time, we get into a fight, Chris threatens to wear that to the rehearsal dinner for one of our kids' weddings. What you're going to learn is that it's not that hard. It only takes one additional person to cause a major shift with you and have the fun be what everybody remembers. That's what we're going to do this holiday season. In fact, this is called the first follower theory. When you're the one person doing something out of the ordinary, people think you're crazy. Like, think about if you were to go in at the holidays and you're wearing some silly outfit. One of my favorite things to do is to buy themed blazers. You can get them really cheap on Amazon that are just ridiculous. Whether they have turkeys all over them, or they have holiday decorations, or they blink or whatever. Hilarious. If you're the only one wearing one, you might feel like an idiot. When 2 of you show up, now there's a party. That first follower that joins in with you turns you from you're an idiot to this looks like fun. Same's true about a dance floor, right? The first person that gets up, you're like, ooh, bad dance move. The second one, you're like, maybe I'll go, right? That's how you go from being the lone nut job to being the leader of the fun train, everybody. That's how fun becomes a movement. And so I'm going to take the first follower theory and I'm going to recruit someone to help me. And I want you to do the same. I am going to get our daughter Sawyer on the line because she is the CFO, the Chief Fun Officer of the Robbins family. And so as I get Sawyer on the line, I want you to think of your Chief Fun Officer, the person you're going to drag in to help you. Because if you both are like, come on, guys, everyone will be like, all right. And the fun bus will run the resignation and the cynicism right on over and make sure that fun bus has a damn good music dance party mix too, because that'll also bring the energy up. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, we'll be right back because we're going to take a short break. But when we come back, I'm going to introduce you to the CFO, Chief Fun Officer of our family, Miss Sawyer Robbins. Oh, and we're going to talk about how the hell we're going to make our holidays fun. And in the process, we're going to give you some amazing ideas for how you can do the same. Okay, so Soy, thank you for being here because you know what? You are the funniest person in our family. Not only because you have the best sense of humor and you have the wittiest and driest sense of humor, but you also bring the fun. And you make our family so much better because of it. And I just love that about you.
Thank you.
I mean, literally, dude, everything. I mean, the foam hats, your idea. Dinner without clothing, your idea. A bar crawl in colonial costumes, your idea. Throwing a fake wedding, your idea. How the heck did you become so fun?
That is a tough question. Honestly, I feel like first off, I'm just very outgoing and obnoxious. So I think that that kind of plays a role into it. But I think that I have been fortunate enough to be a part of friend groups where all we want to do is have fun and do things that are out of the ordinary. And I don't know, you can always just go to a bar, but it's more fun to dress up as like old women to go there. To just go alone. That's what I was for Halloween. I was a granny.
Can you please describe your costume to everybody? Because I think it's one of the best costumes I've ever seen.
I wore a wig and I got glasses and pearls and I got a cane and I was wearing like a sweater. I don't know. And I looked on probably 15 YouTube tutorials of how to make your makeup look like old women. And so I had like wrinkles all over me and a big mole. So, yeah.
Oh, and you know what other detail I loved?
What?
You had on like New Balance geriatric sneakers and you
Oh,
had
yeah, that.
you had a COVID mask hanging from one of those eyeglass things. I mean, the attention to detail. And that's why I wanted to talk to you, because this is the first year that our family is hosting Thanksgiving at Ground Zero for Thanksgiving, which is the Southern Vermont House.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like there are traditions that used to go with the Southern Vermont House when your grandparents owned the house. And now that we are the owners of the house, and this is the first Thanksgiving that we're inviting the extended family to come, that we should probably get really intentional about mixing up the traditions and inserting a lot more fun.
Mm-hmm. That sounds great, honestly.
Why? Do you think that that holidays are normally not that fun?
No, I think they're fun. I love holidays. If I could, I would just have Christmas all year long. But the fact that Thanksgiving is always a good time in when politics are not talked about or money or people's like life. I don't know. I feel like all we talk about is the boring stuff and what everyone does for work. And then Uncle Tom does his accents and everyone laughs and we have the exact same memories told over and over again, and then we go to bed. So I don't know. I'm down for some more fun this year for sure.
I agree. So, can you give me some ideas? Because you're a way more creative thinker than I am. And I remember when we were quarantining, you came up with a chart of themed evenings that we were going to do as a family in order to mix up the doldrum and to create things to look forward to. So, when you look at the research around happiness, researchers have put happiness into two big categories. One is hedonic happiness, and hedonic happiness is, am I having fun right now? It's the moment to moment fluctuating experiences that you have. And let's go back to the metaphor. It's like the waves in the ocean. They come and they go. You can jump in, you can play, you can have fun, and then it's over. And then there is the deeper happiness, the eudaimonic happiness, which is the sense of your life having meaning, of you feeling fulfilled and thriving in that life of yours. And it's important for you to understand that happiness has these two buckets, because I think what happens for a lot of us, and this kind of gets to Andrea's question, is that maybe you have one type of happiness. Maybe you're having a lot of fun on the surface, but life doesn't feel very meaningful. Or maybe you're deep in it, but you're not having any fun. And so I really want to unpack the difference between these two things and why you need both before we jump into the 3 different ways that you can increase happiness in your life. And so let's go to another question from a listener named Rachel.
Hey Mel, I absolutely love your podcast and all of your work. I have a very loaded question, and I know a one-size-fits-all answer might not exist, but I wanted to ask anyway. How can I truly be happy? How do I cultivate happiness? I read so many self-help books, read a lot about the effects of childhood trauma. I journal. I try to be conscious of my habitual thoughts and patterns and work to reframe them. I exercise. I'm always listening to inspiring and transformational content like you. I feel like I do all the things, but I still struggle just to be happy and to feel happy. And I feel very stuck in the same emotions, and I really want to change. I really want to enjoy my life. Do you have any advice?
Rachel, I so relate to you. And I want to just pass the mic to you listening right now. When Rachel said, I just want to enjoy my life, didn't you get the chills? Didn't you nod along and say, yeah, I just want to enjoy my life too? And this is really on my mind because I think that's the point of life, right? To really try to enjoy it. And one of the things that I notice can happen when you are in a period in your life where you're trying to heal, you're investing in yourself, in your personal growth. You mentioned that you're working on trauma. You're trying to dig out of some of the holes maybe that you feel like you fell into. You're trying to change your mindset. That's serious work. That was me for years too. Here's the problem with having a big healing journey. You're not having any fun. I think about periods of my life when I was going through a lot of change and I was working on myself and I was doing everything that you're doing. Every book I picked up was self-help. Everything that I listened to was self-improvement. I couldn't even remember the last time I read a fiction novel or I went to a concert or I went to a party. Everything got so serious because my focus became so serious. And my focus was about improving my life, improving my life, improving my life. And doing the work to change your life, it's important. Doing the work to identify toxic patterns that you have or bad thinking patterns that make you feel like shit, that's super important. But you must also double down on the fun while you're doing the deeper work. And so the first thing that I want you to do is I want you to set an intention that your number one goal this year is to have more fun, to invest in that first category, hedonic happiness, that researchers say is so important. Because yes, it's meaningful. Yes, it's fulfilling to do the hard work to change your life for the better. But changing your life for the better also means that you need more moments of fun in your life. And I worry a lot about this based on what we've all experienced in the past 3 years. We've all become hermits. It's hard enough to get yourself out of your house. But the other thing that's happened is if you're not going into work, if you're still working from home, you're also missing out on all of the spontaneous stuff that happens when you bump into people when you're out and about. In fact, I can tell you a story. Just the other night, it was Sunday night. And, as a bit of background, my husband and I had gotten some really awful news last week that a very, very close friend of ours suddenly died. Age 47, heart attack, gone. And I had been holed up in my house ever since hearing the news. I was super sad, feeling down, and I hadn't left the house in days. And so on Sunday, Chris says to me, Mel, I made a 4:30 reservation at the paddle tennis courts, which is a kind of form of almost like ping pong that you can play, sort of like pickleball in the middle of the winter on these tennis courts outside with some friends. It was the last thing I wanted to do. I wanted to just curl up on the couch and suck my thumb and feel sad. And we got into the car, and the entire ride over, I was sitting there thinking, should I tell Chris I'm pissed that he made this date with this couple to go play paddle? Should I tell him this is the last thing that I want to do? I kept saying to myself, should I say this? Should I not say it? And then I would say, no, don't shit on his parade. Just suck it up. It's going to be okay. We pull up. The sun's starting to go down. It's freezing. I've got a hat on and mittens on, and I'm grumpy, and I don't really want to be there. And then I see our friends, and I felt a little lighter. Do you know it took about 5 seconds of hitting that ball around for me to feel totally different? The truth is, I needed the fun. I needed the laughter. I needed to not be thinking about something so heavy. I needed to see people that I really like. I needed to do something that wasn't that serious, like working on myself or feeling sad or grieving. I needed fun. And getting out on that paddle court, it was fun. And there's a part of me that is sitting here going, Mel, are we really having a conversation right now on this podcast about the obvious? That we need to schedule time to have fun, that we need to force ourselves out of our houses, that we need to break this habit of being isolated and lonely? Yeah, we do have to have this conversation, because I don't think you and I have truly grasped the extent to which our day-to-day lives and our happiness has been impacted by these past 3 years. I mean, even those of us who really enjoyed that period of lockdown where we were trapped inside with our families, this new normal, this part of it, where we're sort of back to normal, but we're not, but we're coping, but we're like this situation, the loneliness and isolation, it feels like it's become everybody's new lifestyle. It's our new default. But this isn't just obvious, it's well researched. Researchers have proven that the difference between people who are happy and those of us who aren't is that happy people prioritize doing things that make them happy. I know, it's so dumb, but I need the reminder too. So now let's go back to my analogy about the ocean and the beach and waves and happiness. And I want you to just imagine that you're sitting on the beach. And those waves are rolling in and they're rolling out, and there's a boogie board sitting next to you. At some point, you have to get off the towel and you got to run into that ocean and you got to go play. And the fact is, it just takes one person to get everybody else to go. There's always that one person in a group of people at a beach who stands up first and grabs the boogie board and says, let's go body surfing. Come on, guys, let's go into the waves. And thankfully, this past Sunday night, for me, it was Chris. He was that one person. And look, being intentional about enjoying your life, about having fun, particularly during those periods of time where you're grieving, where you are going through something difficult, where life feels heavy, prioritizing fun is critical. But that's just one of the 3 things that you and I are going to discuss when it comes to getting intentional and amplifying up the 40% of happiness that is within your control right now. And if you're sitting there scratching your head going, oh my God, this is so me, but Mel, like, I think I forgot how to have fun. Don't worry about it. I've got an entire episode that we did a while back called How to Have More Fun, and I will link to that along with all the studies that we're talking about in the show notes. And so now that you and I have been playing in the waves and you understand that dragging yourself out of the house to the beach, off the towel, into the ocean, and forcing yourself to do things that are fun, that is part of happiness that we cannot escape, you and I are now going to go deeper into the ocean. And we're going to talk about the 2 other elements that you can tap into to create more happiness in your life right now. And we're going to do that using more questions from fellow listeners of the podcast when we come back. Welcome back. I'm Mel Robbins, and you and I are talking about what research says about creating more happiness in your life. We've already talked about the fact that researchers have identified 2 types of happiness: hedonic happiness and eudaimonic happiness, both of which are critical to your overall feelings of happiness. And we've talked about why getting intentional about having more fun is critical to you feeling happier now. Now we're going to jump into the deeper part of happiness, and that is the eudaimonic happiness, whether or not your life has meaning. Because when you go through periods of life where life is monotonous, it just feels kind of blah, you're on autopilot, you're not going to feel that happy. Just ask Jenna.
Hey Mel, my name is Jenna, and my question for you is, how do you truly find happiness in everyday ordinary life? I'm a mom of 2 boys, and I struggle most days with being as joyful as I was when they were very little.
As a mother of 3 kids who are now young adults, I can relate to what you were saying about how you were joyful when they were little. And I love that you use the word joyful, because I want to go back to that metaphor that I introduced at the very beginning of an ocean, and thinking about an ocean when you think about happiness. And so to me, when you go to the beach and it's a very, very calm day, there are no waves, there might not even be a cloud in the sky. Boy, it sure is beautiful. Happiness is like a still ocean on those days. It's your ability to stand in that ocean and feel this state of presence and connectedness and gratitude to simply being in the ocean. And I want to come back to something that you also said that I absolutely loved. You used the word ordinary. And the reason why I think it's important for us to focus in on the word ordinary is we often make the mistake of thinking that happiness is this big thing, this big burst, the big wave. And when it comes to the eudaimonic happiness, the deeper meaning in your life that creates the sense of happiness and fulfillment for you, I want to flip this perspective, because true happiness comes from finding the extraordinary in the ordinary. That's right. True happiness is actually pretty ordinary. And researchers have identified the number 1 factor in you living a happy life. And it is the most ordinary thing on the planet, which is why most of us miss it. And that's the quality and depth of your relationships. So let's unpack this. The Harvard study of adult development is the longest in-depth longitudinal study of human life that's ever been done. I mean, this has been going on for 84 years and counting. And for those of you super geeks like me out there, this used to be called the Harvard Men Study. So when you hear people talking about the Harvard study of adult development, that's the new name for this. And it now includes 3 generations of people that they've been studying. The original 724 participants now include 1,300 descendants. How cool is that? And here's the thing about this study. This study followed people through their life, asking them all kinds of questions as people aged. And one of the reasons why this study is so profound is because it tracked people as they lived. Most studies have people looking backwards, which means, when you look backwards, you often change the details. That's why the Harvard study of adult development is so exciting and so accurate, and the most accurate and important study of happiness that's ever been done. Not only because they have so much data and brain imaging scans, but they've also been studying people in real time, tracking them forward as they're living their lives. And Dr. Robert Waldinger is the fourth director of the study, and he and past study leaders have published these amazing findings that you and I can apply to our lives. These results from the Harvard Men's Study, they've been replicated in 5 other huge global studies. And I'm telling you all this because there's one singular conclusion from all of this data, all of this research, all of these fancy institutions. And it's this: good relationships keep you happier and healthier. Good relationships make you happier and healthier. The single best decision you can make to improve your health and happiness is to cultivate what researchers call warm relationships. I know what you're thinking. Mel, what the hell are warm relationships? Well, from a clinical standpoint, warm relationships are relationships that don't cause conflict, and you feel positive emotions around the people that you have a warm relationship with. Said in a normal person's way, it's basically people that make you feel warm and fuzzy. That's what warm relationships are. And I want you to stop and think right now. Let's apply the science. If you think about people in your life, I just want you to put 2 columns in your mind. Who would you put under the column labeled warm? They give you the warm and fuzzies. You get a text from them. You're like, oh, yeah, okay. You're excited to see them. You feel energized when you make plans. Now there's the cold column. These are people that put you on edge. These are people that drain your energy. These are the people that when they call or text you, you're like bracing for something. I can boil 84 years of research down to one takeaway. You want to be happier? Put all your energy into warm relationships, building them, strengthening them, spending time with those people in the warm column. You do that, you will be a happier you right now. And the second way that you can do that, by the way, prioritizing the warm, is spend less time with people in the cold column. You either need to stop hanging out with them because they're sucking your energy dry, or you got to put some effort into warming them up by forgiving them or reframing how you see them or working on your boundaries so that you're not triggered by them and their negativity doesn't impact your happiness. So keep that visual of a warm and a cold column. And as you meet people in your life, you can immediately feel what they're like. Are they warm? Are they bringing out the fuzzies? Or are you feeling on edge? Because when it comes to happiness, your happiness right now, not the I'll be when happy, the happiness that truly matters, standing in that deep end of the ocean, the quality of your relationships is truly the most important thing that matters. And I can explain why at an even deeper level. The reason why this matters so much, it is the number one indicator of a happy life. Good, warm relationships. Floating in that ocean with your warm buddies, keeping you buoyant. The reason why is evolution. See, positive or warm interactions with people, you know what that does, that warm, fuzzy feeling? Those kind of people in your warm column? They make you feel safe. When you're around those people, you're not on edge, so your body feels safe. And the opposite is true when you're around people that you would put in the cold column, because when you're around negativity, when people trigger you, when they put you on edge, when you feel like you can't be yourself, you're now in a stress response of fight, flight, or freeze. And this response to other people, it's wired in you. Early Homo sapiens survived because their bodies and their brains, they not only encouraged connection,
but they also signaled when somebody might be unsafe. You and I survived because we're social beings. So this is hardwired into us. And here's where it gets interesting. When you feel loneliness, your brain perceives that as life-threatening. And loneliness is not just about physical separation from other people. You can feel very lonely in a crowded room. You can feel lonely in a bad marriage. You can feel lonely in a toxic friendship. And if you're nodding your head right now, thinking, wow, maybe it's not unhappiness. Maybe the core issue for me is I'm lonely. Well, 75% of adults feel moderate to high levels of loneliness. And loneliness is about the quality of your relationships. And I want to tie this back to evolution. Loneliness feels threatening because you're meant to survive in a tribe of people. You're meant to be connected with people that make you feel safe and warm. It's not only part of happiness, this goes down to your mind and body needing protection. And they've even proven that when life is really hard, when it can come at you in full-on attack mode, when you're in survival mode, warm, connected relationships protect you from the stress of life. So how do you do this? How do you tap into relationships? It sounds simple, but again, make the column, warm and cold. And then call your friends, text them, arrange time to meet them. So when you feel a pang of loneliness, I want you to understand it's an alarm, just like anxiety. It's a signal that you're missing connection. Please do not ignore it. You may be surprised to hear that I felt this way for a very long time. I kept saying out loud, I'm not happy. I don't feel fulfilled. But when I dug deep into what was really going on for me, the core issue was loneliness. I was having fun. I was really busy. I was doing meaningful work. But deep down inside, I was really lonely. And it may also surprise you to hear that it was during one of the most successful stretches in my career. I was on the road all the time. I was booked nonstop to give speeches. I was working on all kinds of projects with Audible. The business was booming. I was making lots of money. And I have never been unhappier because I was lonely. I was traveling so much, chasing success, chasing achievement, going for the next thing, staying busy, that I never saw my friends. I barely saw Chris. I missed out on a ton of time with our daughters while they were in high school. It was just go, go, go. Now, I had a lot of fun on the business trips. I would laugh a lot. I was always traveling with colleagues, so I wasn't alone. And I was having fun in the waves of life. But when you talk about floating in the deep end of the ocean, I was profoundly lonely. And that meant I was profoundly unhappy. And it can be powerful when you admit this to yourself, because when you realize what you're dealing with is loneliness, that helps you identify the issue you need to improve, which is you need to start reaching out to people. You know, we underestimate the impact that simply getting an unexpected text from an old friend can have on you. I mean, think about how amazing it is when you have a birthday and everybody on social media that gets, you know, the kind of notification that it's your birthday, they come out of nowhere and they wish you happy birthday. It's like, that's unbelievable. It feels so good. You haven't talked to that person since high school, but it feels good to have somebody just give you a quick comment on your birthday. And so if you're sitting around saying, I'm really lonely, but you're not reaching out, you're not calling people, you're not the one making plans or inviting people over for dinner, guess what? You're going to stay lonely. Because when I really looked in the mirror and said, I'm lonely, I need to do something about this. I never get invited anywhere. I don't see anybody. Well,
I wasn't inviting anybody over. I wasn't making any plans. It starts with you. And look, it could be anybody. It could be friends, family, coworkers. All you need to do is identify old relationships or cold relationships or warm relationships where you haven't seen somebody in a long time and reach out. And by the way, it could be old relationships. It could be people you haven't seen in a long time. Just anybody at all that makes you feel warm. Start putting energy into talking, texting, commenting, and making plans to see them. And be careful of the cold people, because research shows that spending time with the people in the cold column, it can actually make you feel more lonely. And it even worsens your health to be around people like that. And so you've got your friend Mel Robbins' permission to stop putting energy into draining relationships, because that's only going to make you feel more lonely, and spend more time with warm relationships. And that brings me back to Jenna's question, because she mentioned, did you notice that she felt happier when her kids were little? I suspect that when your kids were little, you were probably part of mom groups. You saw young moms all the time at drop off, at pickup, at play group, and you felt like you were part of something. You had more warm relationships in your life. That's a sign that you're just missing connection. And I know I said it already, but I can't highlight enough how profound of a difference it can make to simply admit to yourself that you're lonely. That was the turning point for me when I realized a couple years ago, holy cow, I'm unhappy because I'm profoundly lonely. I don't see Chris enough, so I'm lonely in my marriage. I am lonely in my family because I'm not around. I'm working all the time. I never see my friends. And so once I said it was loneliness, that was the cause of my unhappiness, I could do something about it. And you want to know the first decision I made? I made a decision that I was going to change my work life, that I was going to get off the road, that Oakley being in high school was like a melting ice cube. And once the time was gone, I was not going to get it back. And so I reorganized my entire career, my entire business. Instead of sitting on a plane, I'm now sitting above my garage talking to you in a microphone so that I can be home. And it took a lot of work, but I'll tell you what, realizing that traveling that much for work was making it hard to cultivate those warm relationships, that was a huge wake-up call, because on the surface, it looked like I was having a great time. I was in the waves, but I sure as hell wasn't when it came to the deeper stuff. And I know what you're thinking. Well, Mel, at least you have friends to go back to. What if I don't have any friends or many friends? Well, I would say this. Here's where you can start. Part of warm relationships and happiness is also cultivated by social interactions, the tiny ones you have every single day. Just talk to strangers. This is a great thing to do, by the way. And there's a study that was done by the University of Chicago that you have no clue how happy a random social interaction with a stranger can make you. You kind of inflate in your mind that it's going to be messy to talk to other people, but you underestimate the actual benefits of talking to other people. People who talk to strangers on a train or on a plane or at a bus stop or just at a coffee shop, they're much happier after they talk to the stranger, even if they don't think beforehand that they will be. You know who's great at this? My mother. I was just visiting my mom down in Florida, and when I was little, I used to think it was so annoying, but I now admire this about her. Absolutely everywhere we go, my mom talks to everybody. She talks to everybody about everything. She's constantly commenting on, oh, I like that sweatshirt, or hey, how you doing, or nice day. And people stop and they talk. And next thing you know, they've made a connection, or they're talking about a restaurant recommendation or it's just amazing. And the energy is immediately boosted. And if you're not good at this, here's a great tip. Always compliment somebody's nails. If somebody
is waiting on you or standing in front of you in line, or you're sitting next to them, just compliment their nails. If you see somebody reading, ask them what they're reading and if they like it. That's a simple way to compliment somebody, to open up the dialogue, and it always boosts the energy. And one of the things that I'm really concerned about, and I've talked a lot about this on the podcast, and I know the researchers at Harvard are concerned about this too, and that's remote work. Everybody being at home. When we're at home, we miss out on these tiny social interactions with coworkers, with the barista, with the lady at the checkout counter, with the guy that you always see at the grocery store, with the customers that you're used to seeing come into the store. These tiny social interactions go a long way to making you feel warm. So bottom line, relationships, relationships, relationships. Talk to that stranger in line. Push yourself to reach out to people. Text somebody every single day. And don't forget your family. You kind of put family on the back burner, don't you? Because you think they're always going to be there. Make an effort. There's a lot of people in your family, maybe even cousins you haven't seen in a while, that you have a warm relationship with. I'm prioritizing happiness, which means I'm prioritizing the relationships in my life. But you got to push yourself, okay? Let's make ourselves a promise that we're both going to do this, because you got the research and you now know why it matters. Hey, it's Mel. Thank you so much for checking this video out. And if you like this one, I have a feeling you're going to like this one too. I'll see you there.